She beat the interrogation. It didn't matter. In November 2014, Kern County detectives sat Sabrina Limon down for hours and asked her straight out whether she'd had anything to do with her husband's murder. She said no, and she never wavered. Investigators would later admit it in open court. No confession, no slip, nothing they could use. 3.5 years later, she was sentenced to 25 years to life for orchestrating that exact murder. Nobody broke her in that room. This case runs through one named psychological framework, applied beat by beat against the real record: court testimony, trial coverage, sentencing documents. Today's framework is the one taught to more police detectives in America than any other: the Reid Technique. 9 steps built to turn a denial into a confession. Watch which ones worked on Sabrina Limon and which one, in the end, didn't need to. Robert Limon was 38, a railroad worker at a BNSF rail yard in Tehachapi, California. Married to Sabrina for years. By the summer of 2014, Sabrina had started seeing another man, Jonathan Hearn, a fellow churchgoer she'd met at the Costco where she worked part-time. Robert found intimate texts between them on her phone. He told her to end it. She told him she would. Weeks before the murder, prosecutors would later allege someone tried a different method first. A relative told police Robert had fallen violently ill after eating a banana pudding at home, and that lab tests turned up arsenic. Hold on to that detail. Sabrina was never convicted of it. It matters later, for a reason that has nothing to do with proving who did it. On the 17th of August 2014, someone walked into Robert's workplace at the rail yard and shot him twice, once in the chest. Investigators first read the scene as a robbery. Nothing had been stolen. The killer left almost nothing behind, except a shape on a security camera nobody could yet name. 2 weeks later, a family friend gave detectives a tip: a strange, oddly apologetic voicemail from Jonathan Hearn about Robert's death. That put Hearn on the radar for the first time. Rail yard surveillance had already caught an unidentified man limping near the scene, on a motorcycle. Detectives opened a wiretap, not only on Hearn's phone, on Sabrina's too. Here's the technique detectives were trained on in full. 9 steps, drawn straight from its own field manual: Criminal Interrogations and Confessions, by Inbau, Reid, Buckley, and Jayne. Confront. Develop a theme. Cut off denial. Beat every objection. Keep them talking. Watch for the suspect to go quiet. Offer the alternative question, the one where either answer is a confession. Get the details. Get it on the record. On the 18th of November 2014, detectives brought Sabrina in for what they called a conversation, not an arrest. Told her calmly she wasn't in custody. That's step 1. Positive confrontation. State that the evidence already points to the suspect. Give them the first, easiest door to walk through. She didn't take it. She said she had no idea why anyone would want to hurt Robert. Step 2 is the engine of the whole technique: theme development. The detective stops accusing and starts excusing. Offers a story where the suspect isn't a monster, just someone who got in over their head. It isn't sympathy. It's permission. A face-saving way to admit something without admitting the worst of it. She didn't take that door either. Hours in, reporting on the interview describes her as calm and consistent, giving detectives the same account over and over without a single contradiction they could point to. Steps 3 and 4 are built for exactly this. Minimize denials. Cut a flat "I didn't do it" off before it can fully form. Overcome objections. Take whatever reason a suspect gives for their innocence and use that same reason to pull them back toward the theme. It's designed to close every exit but one. On Sabrina, the exit stayed open. By the technique's own design, The last steps only work once a suspect is worn down, quieter, more passive, ready for the close. The alternative question. Two choices, one softer than the other, both an admission. Detectives never got there with her. There was no passivity to read, no opening for the question that isn't really a question. Here's the part the technique's own defenders don't put on the thumbnail. It's a script for turning anxiety into admission, built on the assumption that guilt shows up as visible discomfort. And that discomfort, pressed correctly, produces the truth. When a suspect doesn't carry that anxiety into the room, the script runs out of material. That isn't proof of innocence. It's a gap in the tool. And researchers have found that classic tells, like fidgeting or broken eye contact, don't actually hold up as lie indicators at all. So, Kern County investigators reached for a different tool from the same interrogation psychology kit. The false evidence ploy. Tell a suspect something that isn't true and watch what they do with it. It's been legal in American interrogation since 1969, when the Supreme Court ruled on Frazier versus Cupp. Police had lied to a suspect about his cousin confessing, and the court held that a lie alone doesn't make a confession involuntary. Britain's police model, Peace, bans this outright. No deceptive evidence, ever. Two legal systems, two different bets on what actually gets to the truth. Detectives fed Sabrina a fabricated detail about the investigation, something untrue, dropped deliberately into the conversation. She left the interview, and on a phone she and Hearn believed nobody was listening to, she called him. The wiretap caught it. Not a confession to murder, something more useful. Proof she was managing the story in real time, coordinating what Hearn should and shouldn't say next. The exact reaction only a guilty, coordinating pair needs to have it all. On that same line, weeks apart, detectives recorded Hearn saying something a jury would later hear almost word for word. "We are on our knees for a reason. We have been dirtbags." Not a confession either, but not the language of two people with nothing to hide. Sabrina was arrested that same day, the 18th of November 2014, alongside Hearn, then released days later. Insufficient evidence. The interrogation room had genuinely failed. It would take almost 2 more years and 1 more piece to finish what the Reid Technique alone couldn't. That piece was Hearn himself. In 2016, prosecutors offered him a deal: plead to a reduced charge, testify against Sabrina, take 25 years instead of risking a murder conviction at trial. He took it. In September 2017, Hearn told a Kern County jury that Sabrina had handed him the rail yard's layout and Robert's schedule, and that she told him Robert would rather be dead than divorced, because losing her would kill him anyway. Sabrina took the stand in her own defense. She denied planning any of it. She said she trusted Hearn, that he'd warned her what exposure would cost her, and that's why she told him what she did. Her lawyer told the jury Hearn's plea deal gave him every reason to lie. The jury didn't buy it. They found Sabrina Limon guilty of first-degree murder, solicitation of murder, conspiracy and accessory, 4 of 6 counts. They acquitted her of attempted murder and of the poisoning charge. 5 months later, on the 21st of February 2018, a judge sentenced her to 25 years to life. Remember the poisoned pudding? The jury didn't buy that Sabrina mixed the arsenic herself. They acquitted her of it outright. But acquitting her of poisoning and convicting her of murder tells you something. This jury didn't believe the whole story. They believed enough of it. That's not a framework failing. That's 12 people doing exactly what they're supposed to do, separating one unproven claim from 4 proven ones. Hearn was sentenced separately, 25 years and 4 months for voluntary manslaughter. Sabrina's appeal failed. California's Supreme Court declined to reopen her case in January 2023. Here's the actual download. The Reid Technique isn't magic, and it isn't proof. It's a bet that guilt shows up as anxiety in a room with 2 detectives and a closed door. And sometimes that bet loses against someone composed enough to just wait it out. That's not a flaw exclusive to guilty people either. The same 9 steps that stalled against Sabrina Limon have produced false confessions from people who were innocent. The Innocence Project has traced roughly a quarter of DNA exonerations in America back to a confession that wasn't true. And in cases originally prosecuted as murder, that number climbs past 60%. What actually convicted Sabrina Limon wasn't a confession. It was a wiretap, a fabricated detail, and a phone call she made the second she thought the interrogation was over. Because the interrogation, in the sense that mattered, never really ended. It just stopped being in the room. That's the mechanism worth remembering, whichever side of an interview room you're ever on. Composure beats confrontation. It doesn't beat surveillance. Quick recap. 9-step technique. 6 steps attempted, 0 confession. And a conviction built on the one thing the Reid model was never designed to cover: what a suspect does the second they think nobody's still listening. Tell me in the comments, knowing what you know now, do you think Sabrina Limon ever actually believed she'd got away with it? If this is the kind of case file breakdown you want more of, subscribe. Every video here runs one real convicted case through one named framework, in full. Next time, the false confessions the Reid Technique left behind, and the interviewing model Britain built to replace it. That video's linked on screen now.